the structure of a conspiracy essentially divides the world into three kinds of people. There are the people who commit the conspiracy, the conspirators. They generally are perceived of as being incredibly evil, cartoon, mustache twirling evil. They have amazing resources and can concoct these fabulously complicated plans. But at the same time, they're incredibly naive and stupid because they have to be in order to expose themselves to some extent. And then there's the army of light, right? The people who can see the conspiracy for what it is, that are trying to save the world from the evil conspirators. And then there's the vast majority of everybody else who are the dupes, the sheeple, right? Everyone else in the world. So that's the world according to the conspiracy theorist. They're in the army of light. They've seen the conspiracy, and everyone else is too stupid to say it.
So, and you mentioned this earlier. What's strange about this to me is that it seems to be part of, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems to be just sort of part of the way we're naturally built to think about things. And there can be certain triggers in the environment can cause a person who would normally consider themselves to be rational to start to kind of fall into this sort of thinking. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think we all have a little conspiracy theorist living inside of us, right? We all tend to be a little paranoid, to think, how could these things fit together? Is this all just a coincidence? We inherently don't like coincidences, apparent patterns. They speak to us. They emotionally respond by saying, that's something real there. We don't like dismissing apparent patterns as just coincidence or illusion. And so we look for the hidden hand, the meaning, and when you're trying to connect events and explain apparently disconnected events or apparent anomalies by saying, well, that's because there's this malevolent intelligence behind it all who's controlling everything, that's a conspiracy theory. So it's a form of pattern recognition in order to generate a narrative that makes sense of a complex world. And, you could make, I hate to resort to hand-waving sort of neuropsychological arguments, but it certainly makes sense that we would have some tendency to look out for ourselves, to be on the lookout for people conspiring against our interests. But we evolved, of course, in small tribes, where a couple people could be banding up against us. But now that same mental hardwiring exists in a worldwide complicated civilization, but we apply sort of the same pattern recognition and saying, the forces are conspiring against me, but these forces are now governments or institutions. It's generational. It's not just a few people who live near me.
And it always seems to me that it's like conspiracy theories are projected toward things that are just very complicated to understand. And it takes something that's this thing that has lots of moving parts, is very complicated. There's more to it than there are more people involved you could ever meet and talk to. And then it turns it into something really, really, really simple. It's like taking something very complex and making it super simple and easy to pick apart in some way.
Yeah, I mean, partly it's a desire for simplicity and understanding. I'm going to make sense of this wide array of events and factoids by saying everything is created by the conspiracy. Any evidence that's there, that was put there by the conspirators. Any evidence that's missing, that was hidden by the conspirators. And so once you're inside that mental framework, there's no way out. It's a self-contained belief system. No evidence can convince you that the conspiracy is not true because that was just planted.
Conspiracy theories are such a fascinating thing about the human mind because I'm reminded of ant spirals, the ant death spirals, where where ants get into a sort of a feedback loop where they can't stop themselves from going round and round and round. It always conjures up that image in my mind because it's like. Several of the elements of the way we make sense of the world and the way that we try to logically go about disassembling experience can get us caught in this weird loop that's almost inescapable. How would you recommend that if you're one-on-one with someone who is deeply invested in a conspiracy theory, what would be the best way, do you think, to proceed to try to knock them out of that loop?
Oh, I don't have any magical solution to that. I don't think that there's any formula or any single approach that works because of exactly what you're saying. I like the analogy of the ant death spiral. We like to think of ourselves as like completely free thinkers, but in fact, we are following algorithms just like ants are. Just our mental algorithms are a lot more sophisticated and complicated. The solution is that you have to get out of that algorithm. That's, again, the metacognition. You have to think about your own thought processes, as much as you can, and even thinking about the way that you think about your thought processes. Because, we're just otherwise that we tend to default back to our biases and our mental pathways of least resistance. So when people are stuck in an isolated belief system like that, a closed off belief system, there is no way to get through to them by definition. All you can do is just be, persistently try to get them to think, about that very fact itself. Try to get them to think about the way they're approaching the evidence, the fact that they're not being open to the outside, and it'll either resonate with them or it won't. You'll get through or you won't. I have gotten through to people, although not usually one-on-one, but like through my podcast. But that's because I get to talk to tens of thousands of people at once, and so when you're dealing with those kind of numbers, people email me and will say that they did come out of that way of thinking over time. Like eventually we sort of broke through, we cracked through. But the probability of doing that on any individual is statistically remote. Belief systems are very good at protecting themselves.